The Ship of Fools, Episode 20, On Borrowed Time. The Man Who Arrived Too Soon. The Battlecruiser PP-608 drifted through a calm stretch of space, the kind of quiet that made Snipes suspicious. He sat on the bridge, tapping a wrench against his knee, waiting for something to go wrong. Banning sipped lukewarm coffee. Moxie reviewed tactical logs. AURORA hummed softly, adjusting internal diagnostics. Then the air shimmered. Not a teleport, not a beam-in, not anything the crew recognized. It was as if the universe hiccuped, a brief, stuttering glitch, and suddenly a man stood in the center of the bridge. He was tall, disheveled, breathing hard, and wearing a jumpsuit scorched by radiation burns. His eyes darted around the room with frantic recognition. "Good!" he gasped. "I made it in time." Banning stood, hand on his weapon. "Who are you?" The man looked at him with a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. "I'm you." The bridge fell silent. Snipes dropped his wrench. Moxie's hand hovered near her holster. AURORA flickered, scanning the newcomer with a dozen overlapping spectrums. The man, the older Banning, raised both hands. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to warn you." Banning narrowed his eyes. "Warn me about what?" The older version swallowed hard. "About what you're about to do." The fractured future. They moved to the briefing room where the older Banning paced like a man who had lived too long with fear. His hair was streaked with gray. His uniform was torn. His voice carried the weight of someone who had watched too many endings. "You're standing on the edge of a temporal fault," he said. "A fracture in time that shouldn't exist. Something you do, something you're about to do, triggers it." Moxie leaned forward. "What kind of fracture?" The older Banning hesitated. "One that collapses timelines. One that erases possibilities. One that eats futures." Snipes shivered. "Like the World Eater?" "No," the older Banning said. "Worse. The World Eater devours stars. This devours choices." AURORA projected a hologram of the man's temporal signature. It flickered like a candle in a storm. "He is unstable," she said softly. "His timeline is degrading." The older Banning nodded. "I don't have long. Every second I'm here, my timeline unravels further." Banning crossed his arms. "If you're me, then tell me something only I would know." The older version smiled sadly. "You still blame yourself for the cadet you couldn't save. You still pretend you don't care about Moxie. You still think Snipes is going to blow up the ship one day, but you'd miss him if he did." Snipes blinked. "Wait, what?" Moxie looked away. Banning's jaw tightened. "Fine. You're me. What do you want?" The older version stopped pacing. "To stop you from making the same mistake I did." The first shift. The lights flickered. Not a power fluctuation. Something deeper. The air thickened, as though time itself had become viscous. AURORA's hologram stuttered, splitting into two overlapping versions of herself before snapping back into one. "Commander," she said, her voice layered with static, "we are experiencing temporal interference." The older Banning grabbed the table for support. "It's starting." The ship lurched. The bridge dissolved into a blur of motion, not movement, but time slipping sideways. Snipes shouted as the walls stretched and contracted like breathing lungs. Moxie reached for her weapon, but her hand moved too slowly, as if trapped in syrup. Then everything snapped back. But the ship was different. The lights were dimmer. The consoles were older. The air smelled of dust and ozone. Snipes looked around. Where are we?" AURORA scanned the room. "We are still aboard the PP-608, but this is an earlier version of the ship." Footsteps echoed in the corridor. The door slid open. A younger Snipes walked in, hair shorter, goggles cleaner, face unscarred by years of mishaps. He froze when he saw them. "Who are you?" he demanded. The older Banning whispered, "This is how it begins." The ship out of time. The ship drifted through overlapping versions of itself, each shift pulling them into a different moment in the ship's history. One moment, the corridors were pristine and new. The next, they were scorched from a battle that hadn't happened yet. Then they were overgrown with vines from a future where the ship had crashed on a jungle world, time folded around them like a deck of cards being shuffled by an impatient god. They encountered a version of Moxie who didn't recognize them and nearly shot Snipes, a version of AURORA who was still in her prototype stage, flickering and childlike, a version of Banning who had lost his entire crew and wandered the ship alone, a version of Snipes who had become a temporal engineer, older, wiser, and terrified. Each encounter left them shaken. Each version warned them of something different. Each version contradicted the others. The older Banning grew weaker with every shift, his form flickering like a dying hologram. "You see?" he rasped. "This is what happens when the fracture grows. Time loses cohesion. Possibilities bleed together. You lose track of who you are." Banning grabbed his older self by the shoulders. "Tell me what I did. Tell me how to stop it." The older version looked at him with hollow eyes. "You trusted the wrong person." The paradox engine. The ship shifted again, violently this time, and they found themselves in a chamber none of them recognized. It was circular, metallic, humming with energy. A device stood at the center, pulsing with temporal light. AURORA gasped. "Commander, this is a paradox engine." Snipes blinked. "A what now?" "A machine that manipulates probability," AURORA said. "It can stabilize timelines or destroy them." The older Banning staggered toward it. "This is where it happens. This is where you make the choice." Banning stared at the machine. "What choice?" The older version pointed to a console. "You activate it. You think you're saving the ship. But the engine doesn't stabilize time. It consumes it. It feeds on potential futures. It erases everything that could have been." Moxie stepped closer. "Then we destroy it." The older Banning shook his head. "If you destroy it, the fracture collapses inward. The ship is erased, all versions of it." Snipes swallowed. "So what do we do?" The older version looked at Banning with a mixture of hope and despair. "You decide who you trust." The betrayal. The ship trembled as the fracture widened. Time peeled away in strips, revealing glimpses of futures that never happened. A version of the crew celebrating a victory, a version mourning a loss, a version drifting alone in a dead universe. AURORA's voice wavered. "Commander, the engine is destabilizing. We must act." Banning turned to his crew, Moxie, Snipes, AURORA, and his older self. "Someone here is lying," he said quietly. "Someone caused this." The older Banning stepped forward. "It was me. I activated the engine. I caused the fracture. I came back to stop myself." Moxie shook her head. "No, something's wrong. He's hiding something." Snipes pointed at the engine. "We need to shut it down." AURORA's hologram flickered violently. "Commander, I am detecting a temporal echo inside the engine. A consciousness." Banning's heart froze. "Whose consciousness?" AURORA hesitated. "Yours." The older Banning lunged for the console. Banning tackled him. The two versions of the same man crashed to the floor, grappling, shouting, each claiming to be the real one. Time fractured around them like shattering glass. Moxie grabbed Banning's arm, the younger one. "Commander, the engine is feeding on the paradox. You have to end this." Banning stared at his older self, desperate, broken, terrified. "Tell me the truth," he whispered. "Why did you activate it?" The older version's eyes filled with tears. I wanted to save us. Banning hesitated. Then he let go. The older version collapsed, sobbing. Banning stood, walked to the engine, and placed his hand on the console. "Aurora," he said softly. "Shut it down." Aurora's voice was steady. "Yes, Commander." The engine screamed, light erupted, time folded inward. The older Banning dissolved into dust. The ship shook, the fracture collapsed, and everything went white. Aftermath. When the light faded, the PP-608 floated in normal space again. The stars were where they belonged. The ship was whole. The air was still. Snipes sat on the floor, trembling. "Are we alive?" Moxie exhaled slowly. "Feels like it." Aurora flickered into view, stable and calm. "The fracture has closed. The paradox has been resolved." Banning stared at his hands, half expecting them to flicker. "What happened to him? The older me?" Aurora's voice softened. "He never existed. Not anymore." Moxie placed a hand on Banning's shoulder. "You made the right choice." He nodded, though he wasn't sure he believed it. Outside, the stars shone brightly, steady, familiar, real. The ship drifted onward. But Banning couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, in some forgotten corner of time, a version of himself was still wandering the ruins of a broken future, whispering warnings no one would ever hear. End of episode 20, to be continued.